If you happen to be somebody who has a mother that has narcissistic personality disorder or the traits associated with narcissism, there's probably some deep woundedness there, and probably pretty pervasive woundedness throughout your childhood. The thing that's really complicated about narcissism in general is that narcissists tend to not get help. They tend to not really be self-aware of what they're doing, and they have a mindset that is sometimes called like a victim mindset, but they really struggle to take responsibility for their actions and take accountability for the ways in which they treat people. And if this is your mother, somebody that you're being raised by, that's going to have a really profound impact on your belief systems about yourself and other people, your sense of self, your self-confidence. And narcissistic people tend to be abusive, whether that's overtly or covertly. What's hard for a lot of people that have narcissistic mothers is that narcissism isn't often violent. It can be. People that are narcissistic can be violent or like physically abusive, but most of the time it's psychological and emotional. So we're dealing with a lot of criticism, belittling, bullying, intimidation, threatening, emotional abuse or neglect, gaslighting. And that takes a huge toll, not only on our mental health and emotional health, but like our development as a child. And if that's coming from arguably one of the most important people in your life, it can cause a whole host of problems. A lot of people don't recognize it till they're a little bit older in life, because this isn't something that's really taught about. So it's not like a child's walking around looking for these things. And because narcissists tend to blame others for their behavior or their actions, a child, even as they grow up into adult, might not understand the impact of being raised by a narcissistic mother, because they might still be believing the lies that it was them, it was their fault, something, they acted wrong or behaved wrong and deserved the way they were treated. So it is a very tangled ball of yarn if you have a narcissistic mother, but it also will help you really understand and will explain a lot of the symptoms that you might have, either on the mental health side or emotional side, and really help you understand your world and the way that you perceive it. So it's worth healing, but it's a big one to deal with. So some of the common traits that we see in people being raised by narcissistic mothers evolves throughout their childhood and into adulthood. So as children, we're going to see a lot of dysregulation. We're going to see potentially behavioral problems. All behavior is a form of communication of an unmet need, and there's a lot of unmet needs when you have a narcissistic parent. So we might see cries for help. We might see cries for attention. We might see a lot of anxiety, a lot of dysregulation. They might be really shy and timid and pulled back, or they might be a little bit more explosive because they bottle it all up inside, trying to prioritize the narc mom's feelings and then blow. As they get older and as they go through childhood development, we can see things like anxiety and depression, self-harm tendencies, eating disorders, substance use disorders. There's a lot that is correlated with having an abusive parent, particularly a narcissistic parent, and it can have a really profound impact. That's not everybody, so if you're somebody that doesn't have those symptoms or those struggles, it doesn't mean that you weren't impacted in some way. It also is like a spectrum in terms of severity, and it can go all the way to the very deep end of the pool. It really all starts with awareness. This is something I talk about all of the time, but we can't heal what we're not aware of. And it doesn't just mean awareness like, oh, I had a narc mom, or oh, I think it impacted me. It really means unpacking and understanding how the ways in which your narcissistic parent impacted you on all levels. So this often includes what we call like psychoeducation, where you're basically learning about the psychology side of stuff. The great thing now is that we've got social media and so many platforms where we've got access to professionals in the field who teach on this stuff, which was something that we didn't have a decade or two ago. So learning the terminology, understanding what gaslighting is, what a smear campaign is, understanding how narcissists act and why, understanding what it means, how it presents, and then how it impacts people. A lot of times we might understand like, oh, that wasn't very great behavior. They shouldn't have yelled and criticized me, but we struggle to understand directly how that impacted us, how that changed who we became or influenced the way we viewed the world. So we got to do a lot of digging and exploring in the beginning. I call it the data collecting phase, where it's a bit of a science experiment. And you just want to learn as much as you can to understand, and then apply what you've learned to explore how that person in your life has impacted you. That's step one. We skip that step. We often have to backtrack to it because we might get off on the wrong foot or misunderstand something. So it's a really worthy step. It takes some time and can bring up a lot of emotions. But once you have that, and I use this method with all of my clients, but particularly with people who have had a narcissistic parent, just the awareness itself is so healing and freeing, because most of us grew up thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm not good enough. If I just tried harder, if I was just better. It is very liberating and healing to go, oh, I was just a child, and it was, my mother's own woundedness, unprocessed trauma, because narcissists are born of trauma, that caused this interaction, that caused this upbringing, that caused this relationship. It's not just me. So just the awareness phase itself brings a lot of healing, but it does take time.